Winter can be mild, with gentle snowflakes drifting down and people enjoying brisk walks in the chilly air. Sometimes the season feels almost gentle, inviting us outside to play or stroll, bundled up but comfortable. But other times, winter can be wild, like the unforgettable winter of 2024, when the cold seemed relentless and every day brought new challenges. Streets disappeared under thick blankets of snow, and the wind howled through empty neighborhoods. Some winters, you just need a jacket, maybe a scarf and gloves, and you're good to go. The cold is manageable, and life goes on as usual. Other times, the air stings your face, biting through layers of clothing, and snow piles up for days, making even simple tasks like getting to work or school a real struggle. Why was it so cold this year? What made this winter so much harsher than others we remember? The answer is more than just "it's winter." There's a fascinating science behind these extreme cold snaps. The main culprit is the polar vortex, a massive, swirling system of icy air that usually stays locked over the Arctic, far from our daily lives. Sometimes, though, the polar vortex gets unstable and sends blasts of frigid air south, plunging cities and towns into deep freeze conditions almost overnight. That's exactly what happened in 2024, turning what should have been ordinary cold into a record-breaking deep freeze that affected millions. Understanding the polar vortex helps explain why winters can be so different from year to year, and why some seasons catch us off guard. It's not random, it's part of a huge, interconnected weather system that links the Arctic to the rest of the world, influencing everything from snowfall to temperature swings. In this chapter, we'll break down what the polar vortex is, why it sometimes visits, and how it shapes our lives in ways we might not even realize. By the end, you'll know why you were shivering this winter, and you'll have a new appreciation for the science and unpredictability of winter weather. Let's dive in and explore this incredible weather phenomenon together, uncovering the secrets behind a winter to remember. So, what exactly is the polar vortex and why does it matter to us? Imagine a giant spinning top made of frigid, icy air swirling high above the North Pole. This isn't just a passing weather event. It's a massive, persistent system that sits at the very top of our planet. The polar vortex is a permanent feature of our atmosphere, and it's at its strongest during the long, dark winter months when the sun barely rises and the Arctic air becomes incredibly cold and dense. This super cold air forms a swirling vortex which is held in place by a powerful band of winds known as the polar night jet stream. Think of this jet stream as a high-speed fence, circling the Arctic and keeping the cold air contained. As long as this jet stream remains strong and unbroken, it acts like a lid, locking the cold air up north and preventing it from spilling southward. The polar vortex itself isn't a storm you'll see outside your window. It lives way up in the stratosphere, far above where our day-to-day weather happens, quietly spinning above us. But when this vortex is disturbed by sudden warming events or shifts in atmospheric patterns, its influence can suddenly reach much farther south, bringing dramatic changes to our weather. Think of the polar vortex as the boss of Arctic air. When it's strong and stable, the cold stays put. But when it weakens or wobbles, that icy air can escape, plunging down into North America, Europe, or Asia, and bringing with it intense cold snaps and winter storms. The polar vortex is a normal, natural part of Earth's climate system. It's not something new or mysterious, and it's certainly not a sign of the apocalypse. Scientists have been studying the polar vortex for decades, and today, we have a much better understanding of how its changes can trigger extreme weather events, from record-breaking blizzards to surprisingly mild winters. The stability of the polar vortex is the key to whether we experience a gentle, mild winter or a bone-chilling, snow-filled season. So, the next time you hear the term polar vortex, remember, it's like the Arctic's giant refrigerator keeping the cold air locked away. But sometimes, the door swings open, and that's when we feel its icy reach. When that happens, cities and towns far from the Arctic can suddenly find themselves in the grip of freezing temperatures and swirling snow. So let's take a closer look at what happens when the polar vortex wanders, and how it can change our weather in a flash. The polar vortex is usually contained by the jet stream, but when that fence weakens, things change. Imagine the jet stream as a rubber band holding marbles. If it gets loose, marbles escape. When the jet stream becomes wavy, cold Arctic air spills south. This is what we experience as a polar vortex event, a sudden, severe cold snap. Cities far from the Arctic, like Chicago or even Dallas, can suddenly feel like Siberia. The sharp boundary between cold and warm air also fuels powerful winter storms. So, a wandering vortex doesn't just bring cold, it can trigger blizzards and ice storms too. That's why these events are so memorable and disruptive. The polar vortex is a massive ring of cold, fast-moving air high above the Arctic. Its strength and stability play a crucial role in determining what kind of winter we experience each year. When the vortex is strong and stable, it acts like a barrier, keeping the coldest Arctic air locked up far to the north. This means the jet stream flows smoothly, and most of the US enjoys milder winters with fewer cold snaps and less snow. Weather systems tend to move steadily from west to east, bringing gentle winter storms and temperatures that hover close to seasonal averages. The risk of extreme weather events is much lower during these periods. But when the polar vortex weakens or becomes unstable, everything changes. The jet stream starts to wobble and dip, allowing frigid Arctic air to spill much farther south than usual. This sudden invasion of cold can trigger deep freezes and fuel powerful snowstorms, especially across the Midwest and along the East Coast, where millions of people can be affected. A weak vortex means winter weather becomes more extreme and unpredictable. We see more frequent blizzards, dangerous ice storms, and dramatic temperature swings. The difference between a calm, manageable winter and a brutal, disruptive one often comes down to the state of the polar vortex. It's the hidden force behind our most memorable winters. So, when you hear about record-breaking cold or see heavy snow piling up, it's usually a sign that the polar vortex has lost its grip and allowed Arctic air to surge southward. One powerful system can create two very different winters, mild and peaceful in some places, harsh and dangerous in others, all depending on its strength. That's the incredible power of the polar vortex, shaping our weather in ways we often don't realize until we're shoveling snow or bundling up against the cold. Next, let's look at a real-world example to see how the polar vortex can impact our daily lives. The winter of 2024 showed exactly what happens when the polar vortex breaks down. Early winter was mild, but in January the vortex was disrupted and split apart. This weakened the jet stream, letting Arctic air surge deep into North America. States from Montana to Texas saw temperatures plunge, with cities like Chicago enduring days below zero. Records fell as the cold lingered, and it wasn't just about temperature. The same jet stream dip fueled major winter storms, dumping heavy snow across the Midwest and Northeast. Travel was paralyzed, schools closed, and millions faced dangerous conditions. The scale and intensity made this event historic, a true polar vortex outbreak. Meteorologists saw it coming, thanks to advances in understanding the vortex. It was a textbook case of how stratospheric changes can unleash Arctic air. A winter we won't soon forget. What causes the polar vortex to weaken and wander? The answer is sudden stratospheric warming. Sometimes powerful atmospheric waves from below surge upward, rapidly heating the stratosphere by up to 50 degrees Celsius. This disrupts the vortex, causing it to weaken or even split. Once that happens, the jet stream collapses and cold air spills south. There's often a delay of a week or two before we feel the effects on the ground, giving forecasters a valuable heads up. Scientists are studying how climate change might make these disruptions more common, but the science is still evolving. When the polar vortex visits, its impact is huge. Power grids are strained as everyone cranks up the heat, sometimes leading to blackouts. Water pipes can freeze and burst, causing flooding and leaving homes without water. Roads and airports shut down, stranding travelers and disrupting daily life. The economic cost is massive, from lost business to emergency repairs. The cold itself is dangerous. Frostbite and hypothermia can set in quickly, especially for the vulnerable. Emergency services are stretched thin, responding to accidents and health crises. Even a snow day can turn stressful when it drags on. Communities must pull together, checking on neighbors and helping those in need. The polar vortex doesn't just change the weather, it changes how we live and connect. Preparation and community support are essential. Let's talk about how to stay safe. When extreme cold is coming, preparation is key. Stay indoors as much as possible. Don't risk travel unless absolutely necessary. If you must go out, dress in layers. Moisture-wicking base, insulating middle, and windproof outer shell. Cover every bit of skin, and don't forget hats, gloves, scarves, and warm boots. Prepare your home, check your heating system, seal leaks, and let faucets drip to prevent frozen pipes. Have an emergency kit with blankets, flashlights, food, and water in case of power outages. Check on neighbors, especially the elderly or those living alone. Bring pets inside. If it's too cold for you, it's too cold for them. Staying safe is about smart choices, not toughness. Community makes a difference. Look out for each other. With preparation, we can weather even the coldest days. The polar vortex may be fierce, but we can be ready. Now let's wrap up with what we've learned. The polar vortex isn't a monster. It's a fascinating part of our planet's weather. When it's strong, winters are mild. When it weakens, we get deep freezes and wild storms. Understanding the science helps us predict and prepare for these events. Knowledge is power. It keeps us safe and turns fear into curiosity. Every frigid day connects us to the vast, swirling Arctic above. Science explains why winters differ and how to stay ready. Next time you hear polar vortex, you'll know what's happening and how to handle it. Embrace the science, stay safe, and stay curious. Winter will always be with us, sometimes wild, always amazing. Thanks for joining us. Stay warm.